It's not about what we want or what we would do. It's about what he would do. He doesn't need us to gather Israel. He can do that all by himself, but he allows us to help him in that work. And so I think, it's important to us to be sure that we're helping him in what he needs done. So we were both born in Southern California. We graduated from high school together, graduated from the same high school, a year apart. We have 5 children, 10 grandchildren. So my parents were both adult converts, so they were the only members of their family that were members of the church.
I'm an adult convert. So my father was an Episcopal priest, and I explored lots of different religions, seeking something when I was in high school. And it took a couple years. I was not easy. But was an adult convert when I was 20. I was 20 years old. There's somebody out there who will benefit from from my story, and that'll be special. We moved here in 1993, and for a job, was my first job out of business school, and so we moved here. Lived in Plano, and then moved up to Prosper in 2008. So that's 30 years. There's a 5-year stint where we were in Northern Virginia, and that's really the only time we've been out of North Texas in the last 30 years.
Interestingly, we have lived in 10 states together. Jon was in the Navy.
Yeah, Navy.
So his Navy training took us to lots of places. We started out in Washington. We went to Florida, Idaho, Connecticut, Hawaii, and then he left the Navy. We moved to California for a job, and then Massachusetts for business school, Illinois for a short stint, thinking that's where we were going to live, and then ended up in Texas.
Yeah.
And then Virginia was number 10. So I went to BYU until we got married, and then we started a family, been raising kids and volunteering, did a lot of volunteer work. I did occasionally work when he was in business school. I worked to help pay the rent, and but mostly I've been home with kids for most of our married years.
Well, I wanted to be a Navy pilot and couldn't, so
because his eyes were
my eyes were
weren't
bad,
good enough.
Yeah, and so I just always have been fascinated by flight. 1984 is when I got my license, and have flown off and on since then, and tried to share it with the family.
It's been a fun thing for our family. We've made some fun trips. One of the first long trips that we did together was in his little plane that he built. When our son Drew went into the MTC, we flew to Provo in our plane and sent him off at the MTC.
It's about an hour that we spent with Elder Anderson, and he started by saying, "Look, I don't have a call for you. We're just,
just getting to know you.
Getting to know you. Your name had come across, and so we just want to get to know you."
It wasn't like a priesthood interview or anything, or a worthiness interview. It was tell us about your family, tell us about your children, what callings you've held, all kinds of questions. So at the end of the call, he said, "Well, thank you." And he said, I'm going to recommend you to serve as mission leaders, but you may or may not be called. And if you hear something, it'll probably be in 6 to 8 weeks. But a couple days later, we got another call from the administrative assistant of President Nelson. And so we had about a 45-minute call with President Nelson, which was delightful and amazing. And he asked us a few more questions, asked about our kids again, our family, and extended a call to be mission leaders. And did not assign us at that time. We didn't receive an assignment until December, but
So this was all still October.
yeah. Well, I made him read it, and it's just like a young missionary getting their call. You know, you click on a link and up it pops, and you read the same introduction. We were on a Zoom call with the family, and I wasn't looking as he read it, and he said the Philippines San Pablo mission, and I said, "Nuh-uh, you're lying." Right? I really thought he was just pulling my leg. I've never been to the Philippines.
I have been there, but it's part of the Navy. So, cumulatively a few months, but there's 16 million members of the church roughly now, I think, and almost 1 million are in the Philippines.
23 missions in the Philippines.
Yeah. There are about 200 right now. During COVID, they pulled back to around 80, and it's grown back to about 200 with mostly Filipino missionaries.
And then the full complement they expect would be 220-ish. So over 3 years, we'll probably see 600 missionaries. So, I mean, there's a lot that I look forward to learning as far as being a missionary, and the promises that, we'll be blessed with the ability to feel the Spirit and know what those missionaries need, and be able to help them in that way is overwhelming to think about being able to do that.
I've said many times, I think, the Philippines needs her. They don't need me. They need the love and the capability that Sister Scholl brings to the mission. And I'll do the best I can. So what makes it worth it? We've never thought of it as, we'll do it if we think it's worth it, or we just had always known that we wanted to, as adults, go give back. I mean, it's a pretty small part of our lives, so we've thought a lot about that. It's like, why, what on earth makes us qualified to do this kind of thing? And I'll get the quote wrong, but Neil Maxwell said, the Lord doesn't look first at your capability, doesn't care about your capability, right? He looks at your availability and your dependability, and then he will increase your capability. The piece of advice I think President Nelson gave us that most stuck with us is to work in unity, to demonstrate, what an eternal marriage can be, working together. And we've heard that repeated over and over and over again.
We can be eternal families, and we can progress and be given second chances and third chances, and become what our Father has in mind for us. So there's a lot of joy in that.
There are specific moments in my life that where I was downtrodden or I was lost, and reached out to the Savior and felt his presence. I don't mean physical presence, but felt the Spirit, and it brings a lot of joy and confidence to know that the Savior loves me that deeply. One of my favorite New Testament stories, it's not really a story, I guess, is it's in Luke. Jesus is in Capernaum, and then there's a verse that says, and the next day he was in Nain. And if you Google Capernaum to Nain, it's 27 miles. And you can imagine, excuse me, you can imagine him going to his disciples and saying, at the end of the day, it's early evening, we got to go to Nain. And they walked all night, so that mid-morning the next day, there was one woman who needed one miracle. So we hope that we can make the journey to Nain, and find one.